You're an Xbox player or your PlayStation or Switch, and you watch your favorite Dead by Daylight YouTuber on Twitch or YouTube, and you notice that their games look really good, or at least they look really bright and vibrant and you can see a lot more. And then when you load up your game and you play, you notice it's way darker and harder to see. Unfortunately, these YouTubers use something called filters, which means they can only be obtained on PC, but there are a few things that you can do on console to optimize the way that your game looks. So it may not look quite as good as some of the YouTubers or the streamers that you see, but the settings that I show you in this video should make your game look and perform as well as they possibly could on console. So let's get started. The first thing I need to talk about is something that they recently added to console, which is called FSR. You don't really need to know how it works or what it is. Basically, it decreases your resolution, but then raises it back up in a kind of a roundabout way. So you get the benefits of a lower resolution, but you still see a higher one. There's really no reason to not have this enabled. It just makes your game perform better for basically no cost at all. I noticed a significant increase in my frame rate when I turn this on, so I definitely recommend turning this on. Second thing I need to mention is the settings on whatever monitor or TV that you're using. I talked about this in the last video, and I'm gonna link that video right here or in the description if you want to finish this video first and then go to that one later. I go much more into depth on it and how you can change your TV and your monitor. Just keep in mind, if you do that, everything that you use that screen for will look different. So it's not just going to be Dead by Daylight, but if you only really use the screen for Dead by Daylight, or if it doesn't really bother you that some other things may look different, I recommend looking into what settings that your monitor has. Without getting into too much detail, you want your brightness to be higher, you want your contrast to be a little bit lower but not too low because you don't want it all washed out. If you have battery saving mode turned on, consider turning that off. And there's tons of other settings like color settings and things with pixels, and I go into all that in the other video, so consider watching that after you're done with this video. Alright, now that we've talked about that, let's get into another new thing. They added FOV. So this goes for every single first-person character in the game, so every killer except Chucky. There's almost no reason to have your FOV and not be at max. You should, in any game you play really, you want to max out your FOV for the greatest advantage that you can get. Basically, FOV just makes you see more. So imagine the way that you see is like a camera. A higher FOV, you're zooming out, and a lower FOV, you're zooming in. You want to be zoomed out as much as possible so you can see as much in your peripherals as you can. The only reason that you would ever have a lower FOV is if maybe you don't have very good internet, or you have an old Xbox or an old PlayStation. For whatever reason you need something that's going to help your performance, having a lower FOV will actually increase performance. Higher FOVs are a lot more taxing on your system, but if your system can handle it, there is no reason that you should ever be anything lower than max on any game, really. Except maybe like Minecraft, I don't know. Any competitive game. I gotta mention this in every performance video that I do, colorblind settings. The colorblind settings are pretty much all we have on console Dead by Daylight in terms of color grading and brightness setting. It's the closest thing we have. Again, I go into a ton of detail in my first video, which I'll have linked here or in the description. It's kind of a preference thing, and sometimes it's even a little situational, but if you want to just copy my settings, right now I'm actually showing my PC screen because it's easier to record that way, but on my console I had it on Tritonopia at 100%. That's my preference, but again, I recommend you watch the other video so that you can come to your own conclusions. This is where I need to split the video up into 3 different sections. There's a brightness setting option on every console that's available, but each one is a little different. So depending on which console that you use, skip to these timestamps that you see on screen. So first of all, go to settings, general, and then TV and display options. There should be 3 rows. Go to the middle one that says setup, and go to Calibrate HDR for games. Your screen's gonna go black for a second, don't panic. Just let it load up. You'll see this screen, hit next. On this screen, they're going to tell you to set it to where you can barely see the gray squares. What you're going to do instead is you're going to increase that brightness a little bit more. Put your luminance to where you can barely see the gray squares like the screen wants you to do. You can test around a little bit, but you can increase it 3, 4, 5 times. Keep in mind, this will make everything that you do on your Xbox brighter. So not just Dead by Daylight, but if you mainly play Dead by Daylight, or if you're okay with switching it back every time, or if you don't mind all of your games being a little bit brighter, this solution shouldn't be too much of a problem. When you hit next, it's going to ask basically the same thing. Always just make your setting a little bit brighter than you normally would. Go to the next screen, do it again. Hit next, This will show your calibrated versus your uncalibrated image. You can compare. Then hit done, your screen will go black again, and when it loads back up, everything should be a little better. If you do plan on switching back and forth between a brighter screen when you play Dead by Daylight and a darker one when you play other games, here's something that you can try. To the left of Calibrate HDR for Games, you'll see in the display row at the very bottom, it says Night Mode. Select that, turn night mode on, go to display, and lower your dim. The more you dim, the darker it'll get, basically sort of canceling out the extra brightness that you just added. So that's a much easier way of darkening your screen when you do other things than changing your luminance the same way we did it before every single time you want to do something different. So just a little hint of dimming should cancel out all the extra brightness. And when you go to play Dead by Daylight, just turn off your night mode. Okay, now we're moving on to PlayStation. Scroll down till you get to color, and under color there should be adjust HDR. Just like we did with Xbox, it's going to tell you to adjust it until the symbol is barely visible. Do that, adjust the symbol until it's barely visible, and then up it by 3, 4, or 5. You can play around with this a little bit, and I recommend that you do. But like I said with Xbox, keep in mind, this is going to change everything that you do on this PlayStation, not just Dead by Daylight. So if you want to darken your screen, you might have to come back to this every time you do anything else. But if you don't mind all of your other games looking a little brighter, or maybe you only play Dead by Daylight, this shouldn't be too much of a problem. Select next, do the same thing, just up it by 3, 4, or 5. Select next, do the same thing. And that should be everything for PlayStation. Let's move on to Switch. You Xbox and PlayStation users, just hang tight, this one's gonna be really quick. So on your main screen here, you should see system settings towards the bottom right. Go ahead and select that. Select screen brightness, and there's a bar there that you can increase. It's that simple. I'm just gonna fire off a few more kind of quick tips for optimization. If you have anything running in the background, so if you were watching YouTube or you had its settings open or something, check that, make sure that's all closed out. You don't want your Xbox, your Switch, or your PlayStation running something in the background while you're trying to play any of your games, really, because it will make your games run a lot slower. Another tip, this one's about internet. Something that I did was I bought a gaming router and I connected it to my family's modem because I live with my family. And what that allowed me to do was I had my own router all to myself. When one router is connected to a bunch of different devices, a bunch of computers and phones and stuff, it has to take its connection and it has to split it up among all of those, meaning that your connection won't be as strong. If you have your own router that you hook up to the modem, that router can be completely just yours alone, and you have all that power being funneled straight into your devices. So if you have the ability, get your own router. Consider a wired connection, like Ethernet. If you're in the same room as your router, you can plug your console directly into your router, which increases performance a lot. To put this in layman's terms, your internet doesn't have to travel over space to get to you, because that takes a lot longer. If it can travel straight through a cord, it's much faster. If you're in a separate room from your router, this is going to be more difficult to do. You have a couple of options. If you live alone or you live with people that don't mind, you can just get a really long wire and connect it from your router to your console by running the cord along the base of your walls and around your house. If you have people that mind, you can try hiding the cord within the walls. You can see where this kind of gets complicated, but luckily it's not something that you need, it's just something that would help, and if you're a try-hard sweat, it's something that would really benefit you to have. And one last thing to improve your performance. It's a bit strange, I guess it's not really optimization or like optimization in the way that you would think about it or the way that I've been talking about in this video, but consider getting an Elite controller, or I think on PlayStation it's called a SCUF controller, I think. Something like that. It's a controller that has paddles on the back so that you don't have to take your thumb off of the sticks to hit the buttons. I have a whole video going much more into depth on this and the settings that I use for my Elite controller. I'll link it right here in the top right or in the description. And if you play on Switch, to be honest, just consider not doing that. Consider buying a PlayStation or an Xbox. And if you have any console at all, consider getting a PC. You have much more options for optimization. Your game is going to run a lot smoother. Your movements are going to be better. You're just going to have more things that console unfortunately just does not have. If this video helped you and you noticed that your game does in fact look brighter, or maybe it performs better, please click the like button. It really helps me and it's completely free. It takes less than a second and I really would appreciate it. If you have any questions, please leave a comment down below. I have tons of tutorials for console players on my channel, so if you want to see more, click the subscribe button. That's also free. Thank you for watching.